Hello everyone and welcome back to Jack in the Books. Today I am joined by a very special guest. It is the queen of teen crime, Karen M McManus. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And this is very exciting because you are actually here in London at the moment. Can you tell me why you're here?
Yes, I am here for a road trip and for Yelp, which was my very first event I ever went to as an author in 2017, so it's really special for me to come back.
And have you managed to get involved in any kind of British culture while you've been here? Watch any British TV?
I have not watched any TV.
No Love Island?
No Love Island. I had some tea. And I had some scones, with cream.
Okay, so then the crucial question from any British person is jam first or cream first?
Jam first.
Okay, that's going to divide the nation. I hope that you
I
know
apologize to the cream first people.
Yeah, they'll be in the comments, I promise you. Now, before we get into the questions that I have for you, I just want to inflate your ego a little bit and just tell everyone
I'm here for it.
How wonderful you are, okay? So, Karen M McManus is one of the most brilliant and exciting writers in teen crime right now. She is the queen of the genre, and I'm very excited that she's joining us. Her first novel, One of Us Is Lying, actually spent over 130 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, which is
actually
crazy.
231.
Fact check. Oh my goodness, that is crazy. That's even more impressive than the fact I was impressed by.
Wikipedia has not caught up with that yet. So.
Okay, that might have been my source. But all I see is people talking about that book, and it has now even been adapted into a TV show, which is so exciting. What was it like seeing the characters that were born in your head suddenly be on the screen?
It was very surreal. I remember I was able to go to the pilot shoot in Vancouver because it was the end of 2019, right before everything. And we drove up to the street, and they had rented out all these houses, and they're building sets, and so there's scaffolding, and there's people with clipboards, and there's actors, and there's producers, like hundreds of people. And all I could think was, every single person is here because I wrote a book. And that was just wild to me. And I got to meet the cast, all of whom are lovely, and they do such a good job.
And do they look kind of how you hoped they would, and how you imagined they would look when you were writing the book as well, all the cast?
Some do, some don't. But I will say, the character of Jake, when I saw that actor, and I actually saw his audition tape before I met him in person, I was astonished. He looks exactly like I pictured him, as though he had been pulled out of my head. It was very wild to see.
Yeah, so obviously One of Us Is Lying is part of the Bay View Trilogy. Yes. At what point did you know that it was going to be a trilogy, it was going to be 3 books? Because we sort of have different characters at the forefront of each novel, don't we? So at what point did you think, this is a story that needs to take place in 3 parts? I'm not done with it yet with just 1.
Well, I really did write it as a standalone. Okay. And that's what I thought it would be. But the response was so overwhelming, and my readers kept asking for more, and my publisher kept asking for more. So I thought, okay, well, what would more look like? And the idea for One of Us Is Next was born. And again, I was like, I'm done, that was it. But I did end it on a little bit of a cliffhanger, which I like to do. And also, there was a plot thread in the first book that I had to edit out because it was distracting. But to me, it was sort of this important backstory and motivation, and I always wished I had had space for it. And I started thinking, what if I built a whole story around that, and it felt like it would bring everything full circle.
And how exciting that, the success of the first novel meant that you could do that too. With thriller and mystery novels, is it important to have everything mapped out before you go into it, or do you do a bit of working out and teasing out the details as you go along, or do you need to have all the red herrings, all the little mysteries planned before you start writing?
It's a little of both. And my process has changed over time, because One of Us Is Lying was what I call a bolt of lightning book. It all just came to me super fast. I wrote it fast, and I sold it fast. I'm like, I'm so good at books. But
this is so easy.
It was not like that. So I thought I knew what the story should be. I wrote a whole draft, and it just wasn't right. And so I rewrote it, and that was not efficient, nor was it fun. So I started being more of a plotter, and trying to really figure out outline and beat sheets, but it still changes sometimes. Like my latest book, Nothing More to Tell, the killer did change from my first idea.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. How interesting. Does that happen a lot when you...
The only other book it changed is Two Can Keep a Secret. Although, no, I will say there's like one final twist in One of Us is Next, which wasn't there when I initially planned it, but it did come to me pretty early.
Okay, well, speaking of which, perfect segue to Nothing More to Tell, which is your new novel. Am I right in saying this comes out on the 30th of August, 2022?
It does in the US.
In the US,
UK,
okay.
I think is 2 days later, so I think it's September 1st.
I see, and this is the beautiful UK edition, which you're actually holding for the first time.
I just saw this today, and I mean, I was blown away by the sprayed edges, how deep and vibrant they are. It's just so much prettier than even, you can possibly see online.
Than a computer can do justice,
Yeah, it's just so elegant and so stunning, and I love it.
So all of the covers have these beautiful sprayed edges as well, and they are all very matchy-matchy. This is a lovely collection
to have. When you put them, sort of next to each other on a bookshelf, they look so...
I just want you to know that when I leave here, I'm putting my bag here and just minesweeping.
Except for this one I am taking.
that one is yours.
Because I don't have a copy of this because it's brand new, so I'm just going to take it home with me.
So I've actually got the full stash of all of Karen's books right here, and I'd love to ask you, is there a particular order that you need to read these in, or can we just take them as they come? Are there any series, all standalones?
Yeah, so for the most part, you can read them in any order.
Yes.
The only real difference is One of Us is Lying, and One of Us is Next are a series. This is first, this is second. Once you've read them both, you are done for now. There's a third book coming.
In the works.
Everything else can be read anytime, any order. There's no spoilers. They're all standalones. You don't have to have read one to enjoy the other. I will say Nothing More to Tell has some Easter eggs from previous books. They're kind of fun, but you don't have to have read them to read the book.
Okay, perfect. I do have some questions for you about Nothing More to Tell.
Okay.
I hope that you have more to tell me. Because
it will not be nothing.
I've got questions for you. So, should we give everyone a little teaser about the setting? Because I think the setting in this book is super interesting.
Yes. So Nothing More to Tell, it's set in a small town in Massachusetts, which is where I'm from. And it's really centered around the school.
Yes.
So there's a school called St. Ambrose, and it's a private school, but it's an interesting kind of private school in that it's set in this very sort of working class town with a very bad public school system. So all the local kids who are able to get a scholarship go to this school. But the wealthier kids who can afford the tuition are not necessarily the best students. So you have this real have, not kind of dynamic there.
So were you interested in exploring the theme of class within this novel? Because I think that's really exciting to see in a thriller and mystery novel, to have that added texture and that added depth of kind of social commentary, to talk a little bit about class. So was that something you were interested in doing?
I was, because in particular, the mystery surrounds a teacher, a very beloved teacher in the school, who was murdered in the woods behind the school. It was 4 years ago, when all the kids were 13. And 3 of the students from the school found the teacher's body. Yeah. And it was sort of, suspicious, mysterious circumstances, but 2 of the kids were very wealthy, very privileged, very influential parents. And even though their stories were a little, didn't quite add up, they were never really questioned. The 3rd student is one of the POV characters. He is a scholarship student. However, he kind of got brought into this group with the other kids, and they became the sort of impenetrable trio who are almost heroic as opposed to suspicious. And that wouldn't happen for every kid. And it probably wouldn't have happened if it were 3 of the more working class kids.
Yeah, okay, interesting. And I thought that was interesting what you mentioned there too, about having an unlikely sort of pairing, this group of people who come together to solve a mystery, and that's something that a thread that sort of runs throughout your books too. Are you interested
my favorite things to do?
Yeah, kind of pairing up unlikely duos, trios, quartets.
Yes, exactly. That was really the whole idea behind One of Us is Lying. Is I was very inspired by The Breakfast Club and the idea that if you bring people together who seem like they have nothing in common on the surface, but you force them to interact with each other and solve a problem, they'll find out that they're not as different as they think. And that does happen in pretty much all my books.
Do you know, now I'm thinking maybe that's why I enjoy them so much, because The Breakfast Club is one of my favourite movies.
Mine
so
too.
I'm like, because I think it's so genius to have this group of students who would not normally be sitting in a classroom together to suddenly have all these interactions in that movie. So definitely that's really cool to see in your books too.
You'll Be the Death of Me was sort of loosely inspired by Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So I do love an 80s movie,
I see.
But I also love, just a band of kids sort of having a day totally separate from their usual day, and then they run into misadventure.
So do we have any influences that have kind of found their way into this book? I'm sort of thinking we've got a bit of dark academia there, like The Secret History, If We Were Villains.
The Secret History is one of my favorite books ever.
Do you think maybe the influences sort of creep up on you, like just things that you really love, and obviously they've inspired you, and so then they kind of find their ways into...
Absolutely. I mean, that whole concept behind The Secret History of this very exclusive, very closed-in group of students who only take one class with one teacher, who they adore, but who actually, as you get to know the story, he's not as picture perfect as he seems, and our beloved teacher in this book is similar.
And that's true with a lot of the kind of adult figures too. The role of parents is super interesting in this book, and also the rest of your back catalogue. I guess we can say now there's 6 of them. Like these are your children sitting right here on this table. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of talking about parents and discussing the role of parents within this book.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's sort of 2 very different types of parents. Bryn is the other protagonist, and she used to be a scholarship student, but her dad got a big promotion. They moved away. Now they're coming back. She wishes that they weren't. But her parents are very involved. They're very secure financially. They really keep an eye on their kids, and they're trying to make sure that they're doing the right thing. Trip, on the other hand, his mom kind of took off when he was very young, and that's a really deep emotional wound for him that he has not gotten over. And his dad has done his best, but his dad really doesn't know what Trip needs. And so his response to that is just kind of be hands off. Like, well, you're 17, you can sort of manage yourself. And of course Trip does a horrible job of managing himself. He really does need a parent, and that's something he's looking for. And he finds it a little bit in his boss, which was sort of a lovely side relationship within the book. But he's really on his own in a lot of respects.
And there you kind of mentioned the character names. So in this book we have Bryn and Trip as our 2 main sort of POVs. And one thing I love about these books is the character names are always just so memorable and brilliant.
I love naming people.
What is that process like for you? Do you sit with a big mind map of all the different names, or do you feel like, no, this is a Bryn right here?
It kind of comes to me. I always want the names to be a little bit distinctive, because I do feel like when you write POV, and I also write a lot supporting characters. There's just a lot of people in my book. And I need to give them names that will kind of stick in your mind, so that's part of the process. But, it was interesting with Nothing More to Tell, because I actually started with 2 completely different main characters. And the book was not working, and I couldn't figure out why. And one frenzied weekend, I just started trying all kinds of different stuff. And I actually took 2 characters from You'll Be the Death of Me and tried to write it from their point of view. And I was like, okay, that's not working, but I think I need new characters. And I have always really liked the name Trip for a boy. To me, it's like a great nickname, and it sounds like a rich American kid, which Trip is not, but he's passing for one. So it just felt like, and it's a nickname, of course. His real name is Noah. And Bryn, I think, is just a strong name. It's a little bit like Bronwyn in some ways, which is one of my favorite character names I've ever given. It's like a no-nonsense, to-the-point type of name, and that's the kind of person she is.
Well, that was one of the things that I picked up, is I loved that sense of artifice, like a little bit of a facade, that Noah had this kind of nickname of Trip and had renamed himself Trip. So that's
and then his mother actually calls him Trey, which is a weird little nickname she's given him that he does not like, which is very indicative of their relationship.
Well, it's really interesting to hear you talking about it, and how, sometimes when you read a novel, all these things have been thought through, and all of these things mean something,
It's not a coincidence.
Exactly. We also have sort of sibling relationships explored. I'd love to know, do you have a sibling that you sort of solve murder mysteries with? Or?
I know that I could ask my sister to help me bury a body. She would ask no questions.
She's going to be there.
She would just bring her shovel, wear her boots, be like, let's go. I have 4 siblings, an older brother and 2 younger sisters. I'm very close to my sister. So the Bronwyn Maeve relationship, and in this book it's Bryn and her little sister Ellie. like those are very much modeled on me and my sister Lynn.
Oh, that's really lovely. Yeah. That's very interesting now for people reading to be like, okay, I'm getting a little bit of you kind of creeping in here too as well. So that's really cool. The other thing I'd like to ask you is which character was most fun to write, specifically in this novel, but also across your novels, and how do you decide which POVs to write from?
Yeah, the most fun character in this book is actually one of the most fun characters I've ever written, and that was Trip.
Okay.
I loved writing Trip. I love unreliable narrators. Yeah. I mean, we know from the start, Trip's whole thing, the whole book is titled after what he tells everybody when they ask, is there anything else you can tell us about what happened to Mr. Larkin? And he's like, there's nothing more to tell. Of course he's lying, we know that from the start. And it was such an interesting challenge to try and make sure that the reader likes Trip, because he's very likable, and roots for him, while at the same time knowing he is an absolute liar, and he's done some things he's not proud of, and we were trying to figure out what those are, while still kind of rooting for him to succeed, I hope. So that was a fun balance to
navigate that.
Yeah, and I like him because his voice, to me at least, was really strong and clear. And when you write multi-POV, you come to love characters who almost write themselves because they make my job so much easier. And I would say, fan favorite Nick McCauley is another character like that, who just sort of feels like they take over, and you're just along for the ride.
And so how do you decide which of the characters within your novel is going to be a POV? Because like you said, we also have a lot of supporting characters who play crucial roles. But how do you decide which one we're going to really, dive into their psyche?
Yeah, it's got to be the people who have something at stake.
Okay.
So in this case, with Bryn and Trip, and it's just the two of them. Sometimes I do three, but this novel seemed like two was right.
Yeah.
Bryn is moving back to her hometown where she doesn't want to be. She was recently kind of humiliated as a journalist by a prank at her old school. She really wants to prove herself with this new internship that she has. And she's also at that stage in life where she's starting to think about, who influenced me and who helped shape me as a person. And she really thinks about her teacher, who kind of guided her towards journalism, and she never got to thank him for that, and she just feels like that is a loose end in her life, and she wants to tie it up.
Yeah.
And then you've got Trip, who of course is one of the people who found the body, which was a real defining moment in his life, and in a weird way, it sort of capitulated him into like the high society of this school, which some people could think was a boon, but he's uncomfortable where he is. And he's desperate to get out of town. He feels guilty. He feels watched by everyone. And he doesn't want the truth to come out until he does. So those two together just felt like a really good mix.
Yeah. And if you are sitting here watching this video and you don't immediately want to pre-order this book, I don't know what video you're watching, because
I don't know what to tell
I've read it and I'm like, I want to read it again now. One thing that I also love about these books is the titles, because they're so endearing. They make you want to pull it off the shelf straight away. How do you decide on a title? Does a project have a title right from the offset, or does it kind of come to you maybe through something someone says?
It's a different kind of process. Like with One of Us is Lying, it was not titled. While I was working on it, I was calling it The Breakfast Club Murder, which of course was not going to be the title. It was just in the document. Yeah. And then I heard someone say that sometimes you can find a good title by like reading through your book, and if a phrase jumps out at you, that could make a good title. So I started reading through my book, and the first phrase that jumped out at me was, "You can't pimp out my sister." Okay. And I thought, okay, that could be a good title, but not for this book.
Okay, yeah.
But the second phrase was "One of us is lying," which is something that Bronwyn says.
Yeah.
She says, "One of us is lying," unless one of us is lying, which is always a possibility. And I was like, there we go.
That's it.
As soon as I put that on, it just felt like that should have been the title the whole time. And I do often, I've used that trick time and time again. So I used it in "You'll Be the Death of Me," which was a very early, it's a very common phrase in America.
Yeah.
You guys use it as well,
and know, the best moment is when you're reading a book and they say the title and you're like, that's
and
it,
it's
that's
there.
the moment.
And the character of Mateo, his grandmother says it to him, but she says it in like sort of a loving way, like he exasperates her because she loves him so much. And I felt like that really encapsulated the three characters. Like they care about each other so much that they can really get under one another's skin.
And they have that history too, don't
they? Exactly. And then Nothing More to Tell also was something that Tripp literally says. So that's how those came. One of Us Is Next just felt like a no-brainer. You know?
Yeah.
It had to be one of us.
Yeah.
And Next. And Two Can Keep a Secret is the only one I actually didn't title. My editor came up with this.
Oh,
and I loved it. Yeah. I was calling it Echo Ridge for a while because that's the town, but again, that's not like a very exciting title.
And are you glad that you start with this? You feel like this is the...
I think it's the perfect title for this book. I do think, like, if I had known I was going to write a sequel to One of Us Is Lying, maybe I wouldn't have started it with 2, because I think that does confuse some people.
I see, you got 1 and 2.
Yeah, they think this is the sequel to One of Us. So I apologize for that.
Sorry about that, guys.
I didn't think about that when I said yes to the
But we got the consistency of One of Us Is Lying, One of Us Is Next.
Hopefully that helps.
I think so. Now, I'd love to know, when was the first time you saw one of your books, I assume it was One of Us Is Lying, in the bookstore?
Yeah, you know,
what
it's
was
funny.
That moment like?
It was actually before it was out in the United States. So it was maybe like 2 days before my launch date, and I was with my sister and our kids.
Bearing a body.
Yeah, we just finished, and then we're like, let's look at some books, like you do. And my son was there, and my nieces. You know, we just wanted to go and see where the book would be on the shelf. You know, so look at the M's and say my book will be there. And when we got there, sometimes this happens. The bookstore had put them out early. And it was there. And the thing is, we weren't expecting to see it, and so we were like, all messed up, and like, hair is terrible. And like, I don't even want to take a picture with this book, so it's just going to be a moment for us, because I'm not posting this.
That's even more special, I think.
But it was astonishing to see it there. And then I remember my critique partner was in town for the launch, and then we're like, let's go to Barnes & Noble, and let's see our book. And she was like, oh, there's the shelf of bestsellers. And I said, oh, well, I won't be there. And it was there. And that was really cool.
Oh, wow, what a special moment to see it there. Especially when you weren't expecting it too. So it'd be like, hang on a minute.
Why would I be there? It just came out. But, readers just really responded to that book from the beginning.
Yeah, well, rightly so, I think. And I'd love to know how long it generally takes you to write a book. Does it really vary with the different ones? What's the general time frame from I've had the idea to seeing it on that bookshelf?
If it's flowing well and I don't hit any roadblocks, I can usually do a first draft, very messy first draft, in about 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
If I hit a roadblock, like I did with Two Can Keep a Secret, and even with Nothing More to Tell, although that was a shorter one, it might be more like, this was 9 months, Two Can Keep a Secret, and it was like 5 to 6 for Nothing More to Tell.
Okay, cool.
But I'm a relatively fast writer, which is helpful.
That is quite speedy,
in the YA category.
So you can get them out to the people who are sitting there waiting for their next favorite read.
We can do a 1 a year.
Exactly. The other thing that you explore a lot of the time is unlikely romances as well as friendships. Is there more of that and Nothing More to Tell?
There is. Okay. This is actually my first, I think it's my first, Enemies to Lovers.
And we love an Enemies to Lovers romance.
We do. It was so fun to write.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I would love to ask you some quick fire questions.
Okay.
Rapid fire, kind of throw these questions at you. So we'll start with some questions on Nothing More to Tell, and then we'll sort of glide into some more general kind of book lover questions too.
Sounds good.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
It's gonna be intense. I hope that I'm ready to read these out quick enough. Okay, so first question is, who should we be watching out for in this book? Who's a character you really want to highlight?
Al, the Samoyed.
Yeah.
He's based after my sister's dog, and he's just like so happy and silly and optimistic, which I think is funny because Trip is super not optimistic, and he's always sort of looking at Al like, why are you so happy? I just think it's cute.
So we've got that balance. Would you like to attend this school? Could you see yourself there?
I would not like to attend this school. No, I don't think so. I think there's just too much tension at this school, and also too many murders.
Okay, this is true. You tend to avoid that. What is Bryn's biggest flaw, do you think?
Bryn's biggest flaw is that she is kind of rigid. She's like a black and white thinker, and she has a hard time seeing shades of gray.
I see. Which character would you most like to go for a coffee with?
I would like to go for a coffee with Bryn's sister, Ellie. Ellie was one of those fun characters to write that I think she's hilarious, she's sweet, she always kind of sees, the little nuances of things with a sense of humor.
So you'd have a good chat over
I think
coffee,
so,
I think. Yeah. Okay, so more general fiction questions. Paperback or hardback?
Ooh, That is a hard question. I mean, paperback you can carry with you, like this is going to slide into my suitcase, which I
Absolutely.
like. But there's something about the heft of a hardcover that I also like.
Okay, what is the weirdest thing you've used as a bookmark?
Probably a nail file.
And are you a bookmark person, or do you fold down the page?
Never fold the page.
You don't?
No.
I'm a serial dog eater, and I think that's terrible.
No,
maybe.
I will actually
But you cannot do that with these beautiful sprayed edges. I wouldn't dare.
I would actually just close the book and find my page again before I would dog ear it.
Okay, fiction or non-fiction?
Fiction.
Gotta be, right? Romance or a kind of thriller mystery novel?
Both.
Both.
Obviously.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put them together.
And what is your favourite genre to read in your own time?
Romance.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's your least favourite genre? What do you find yourself never really gravitating towards?
I don't really gravitate towards science fiction.
Okay, me neither. I agree with you on that one. What is one book that you wish that you had written?
Gone Girl.
Oh, of course. That would be incredible.
Yeah.
What's the last book that you read?
It's called I'm the Girl by Courtney Summers. It's her new book, not out yet, but out in September.
Oh, you got a little preview.
Yeah.
What's the last book you didn't manage to finish that you had to give up halfway through?
Oh, I can't say that.
We don't
as an author, you just can't ever say that.
I tried, guys. I tried to get some tea there. Classic or contemporary?
Contemporary.
The best classic book?
Oh, I love a good Charles Dickens.
Oh, you do?
I do. I think I have these sprawling casts, and I think I always like that about his books.
What's the longest book you think you've read? That's a tough question.
That is a tough question.
Even though I asked it, I appreciate that's a tough one.
I recently read a nonfiction book. It was Empire of Pain, and it's kind of the story of the Sackler family, and how they really sort of brought on the opioid crisis in America and the world. And it is a very thick book. I will say, though, I read it electronically, and I was like, I am nowhere near done with this book, and I've been reading it forever. And it turns out there was so many footnotes that
I see.
they were 40% of the book.
Oh, so the end kind of crept up.
I was like, oh, it's over.
Oh, it's done. Okay. And my final question for you is, what is the next book that you're hoping to read?
Let's see.
What's top
next
of your
book
TBR?
I'm hoping to read. I don't know why my mind always goes blank when people ask me these questions. There's a million books that I want to read.
There's actually too many.
And now that I'm thinking about it, I know Tiffany Jackson has a new book out, and I'm blanking on the name of it, but I always want to read her new books. Yeah, it's it's sort of like a modern take on Carrie.
Okay.
Bloody Prom. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, and of course the next book that you should read, Nothing More to Tell. Look at that segue, come on now.
Be here very, very soon.
Thank you so much, Karen M McManus, for joining me on my channel.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for chatting and being so honest and open and talking about your books. I really appreciate it.
It was great.
And of course, you can go and pre-order this book right now.
Please do.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like and you can subscribe for more from me. Bye-bye.
Bye.